A lot of people think of inflation as something that hits you at the gas pump, or maybe when you notice your groceries cost a little more than they used to. But in retirement, inflation does something much more dangerous. It erodes your purchasing power silently and permanently if you don't plan for it. What costs you $80,000 per year to live on today might cost $100,000 or even more just 10 years from now. And if your income doesn't keep up, you're not just spending less, you're sacrificing the lifestyle you spent decades building. But here's the good news. Inflation doesn't have to derail your retirement if you understand it and you plan for it early. Hi, I'm Mark Wisniewski, president of Southern Incomes. In this video, I'm going to show you what inflation really does to your retirement, why some income sources are more exposed than others, and how to build a plan that's built to help you adapt to rising costs over time. If you find this helpful, feel free to like and subscribe. Now, let's dive in. Most retirees I speak with don't feel inflation all at once. They feel it slowly, and you might not notice when the cost of your groceries goes up by $1 or when your utility bill inches higher each year. But over time, that silent rise in prices starts to have a real impact, especially when you're no longer earning a paycheck. Let's break it down. If your retirement plan is based on spending, say, $80,000 a year, and if we assume just 3% inflation, which is historically moderate, then 10 years from now, you're going to need over $107,000 to maintain that same $80,000 lifestyle. That's not for a luxury upgrade. That's just to live the exact same way that you do today. Now extend that out over 20 or even 30 years of retirement without a strategy to account for rising costs. What felt like a comfortable income today can start to feel tight and stressful later on. And that's where I see a lot of people get blindsided, not because they spent too much, but because they didn't plan to keep up with real-world expenses. Here's what inflation actually does in retirement. It increases your basic cost of living every year. It makes fixed income sources feel smaller over time, and it forces larger withdrawals from your portfolio to buy the same things, which can accelerate depletion if markets are going down. And if not planned for, it quietly shrinks your financial freedom just when you should be enjoying it the most. The key isn't to panic, it's to prepare. In this section, I'll walk you through what income sources hold up well against inflation and which ones can leave you vulnerable. Because understanding how you're generating income is just as important as how much. Part 2, income sources that lose and fight against inflation. Once you understand how inflation erodes purchasing power, the next question becomes which income sources keep up and which ones fall behind. Because not all retirement income is created equal. Some will grow with you and others will stay flat while your costs rise around them. Let's break it down into two categories. First, income sources that struggle with inflation. These are sources that often feel great early in retirement, but lose purchasing power as prices go up. Fixed pensions without cost of living adjustments. Many traditional pensions are paid out in an amount that's flat for life. If yours doesn't have a cost of living adjustment or COLA, it might cover your expenses today, but 10 or 15 years from now, it feels much smaller. Annuities without inflation riders. Some annuities provide guaranteed income for life, which sounds appealing, but unless they include inflation protection, that guarantee shrinks every year in terms of purchasing power. Bonds or CDs with fixed rates. While these are often considered safe, they offer fixed interest. So in a rising cost environment, your income stands still while your expenses don't. Rental properties sometimes. Real estate can help hedge against inflation if rents rise and expenses are manageable. But what if property insurance or taxes or maintenance rise faster than rent, or your home isn't occupied? That income can lag inflation. Now, income income sources that help you fight inflation. These are tools that can grow with you and provide income that's more resilient over time. Social Security with built-in COLA, or cost of living adjustments. Social Security is one of the few guaranteed income sources that includes annual cost of living adjustments. While it doesn't track inflation perfectly, it is a strong hedge, especially if you delay benefits to boost your base amount. Stocks and stock-based portfolios. Equities have historically outpaced inflation over time, and a well-diversified investment portfolio with the right risk management in place has historically provided long-term growth and potential for rising income depending on your strategy and, of course, market conditions. Real estate with rising rents. While not guaranteed, rental properties in strong markets can outpace inflation if rents increase and management is efficient. Roth accounts used strategically. While Roth IRAs don't fight inflation directly, they provide tax-free growth and withdrawals, which helps you stretch your income further, especially as inflation pushes taxable brackets higher. So, what's the bottom line? Inflation isn't just a general economic threat, it's a retirement income problem. And the solution is to build a diversified plan that blends income that grows, income that adjusts, and smart withdrawal strategies that protect your purchasing power long term. In the next section, I'll walk you through 3 specific ways to build inflation protection directly into your retirement plan. Part 3, 3 ways to build inflation protection into your retirement plan. We talked about how inflation chips away at your lifestyle and which income sources help or hurt your ability to keep up. Now, let's get tactical. Here are 3 ways to build inflation protection directly into your retirement plan so you can feel more prepared to navigate retirement even as your costs change. Strategy 1, blend guaranteed income with growth. Some income sources give you predictability while others give you flexibility and growth. You need both. I work with many clients who use a combination of, say, Social Security for stable income and investment withdrawals from a diversified portfolio for flexibility, and in some cases, an annuity or a pension for a baseline guarantee. The trick is not to over-rely on any one source, especially if it doesn't adjust for inflation. By building a portion of your income that has long-term growth potential, whether that's through equities, real estate, dividend-producing assets, whatever it might be, you're adding potential inflation protection to your income mix. Strategy 2, use a dynamic withdrawal plan, not a flat percent. One of the biggest risks in retirement is withdrawing too much too early, especially in a down market. But the opposite is also true. Withdrawing too conservatively can leave you with more money but less lifestyle. That's why I help clients use dynamic withdrawal strategies where we adjust income based on portfolio performance, those inflation trends, spending goals by phase, early, middle, and late retirement, and this helps you maintain spending power in your most active years while reducing the risk that you're going to outlive your money. Flat 4% rules may not reflect today's realities. A flexible system that adapts your lifestyle and market conditions may offer better outcomes. Strategy 3, set aside a rising cost reserve. Here's a practical tool I use with many clients. We earmark a portion of their savings specifically for future inflation shocks, like health insurance premiums, long-term care, how about property taxes, travel or lifestyle expenses that they want to protect. We call this a rising cost reserve. It's usually a mix of short-term bonds, dividend ETFs, or laddered CDs set up specifically to supplement spending later when today's income doesn't go as far. This doesn't have to be complicated, but knowing that you've built inflation buffers into your plan, it helps you stay grounded even when those costs are going to keep rising. A final thought, inflation doesn't have to be a threat, it just has to be accounted for. When your income is structured correctly, monthly and your spending plan is adjusted with real life, your income plan is designed to help you keep pace with inflation over time. In the next section, I'll show you what I tell every client when they ask, well, how much do I need to factor in for inflation? How much is too much? How much is too little? Part 4, how to estimate inflation in your retirement plan without overdoing it. If you've been watching the news, you've probably heard a lot of talk about inflation, and the headlines make it sound like prices are spiraling out of control. But in retirement planning, the real challenge isn't inflation itself, it's how to estimate it and how to adjust without overreacting. Here's how I walk clients through it. Start with a realistic baseline. Now, for most plans, I assume a 2.5% or even a 3% annual inflation as a starting point. That's based on long-term historical averages, not a 1 year of high prices or some kind of market panic. If we assume too much than that, say 5 or 6%, your projections may look worse than they actually are, and that could lead to oversaving, overspending in early years, or winding up retiring later than you need to. But if you go in the opposite direction and you assume no inflation or 1%, you risk falling behind, especially over a 25 or 30-year retirement. The sweet spot is using a reasonable base inflation rate and then stress testing your plan at higher scenarios. And you don't use one number. Go category by category and use it in the same way. For example, healthcare costs typically rise faster than general inflation. Sometimes it is 5 or 6% per year. Travel, food, and housing, that may track more closely with CPI. Fixed rate mortgage payments don't inflate at all. In fact, they become more affordable over time. That's why I often break expenses into separate buckets when we build your income plan. We have your essentials. That's things like your groceries, utilities, insurance payments. Lifestyle. That's your traveling, your hobbies, dining out. 3, health, premiums, out-of-pocket, long-term care. Each of these may have its own inflation, so your plan reflects real-world price movements, not just some kind of average. Test what-if scenarios. This is where true retirement planning becomes so powerful. Once we built a baseline plan, we stress test it against higher inflation, market volatility. How about extended longevity, major health events? I call this pressure-proofing your plan. So you don't just retire comfortably, but you stay retired confidently no matter what inflation looks like 5, 10, or 20 years from now. Because the goal isn't to predict inflation perfectly, it is to build a plan that works even when reality is imperfect. So let's recap. Inflation isn't just about prices going up. In retirement, it's about keeping up with that year after year, decade after decade. We've covered what inflation actually does to your purchasing power, why certain income sources fall behind while others keep pace, how to structure your investments and withdrawals to stay flexible, and how to estimate inflation without building a plan based on fear. Here's the bottom line. Inflation is real, but it is manageable if your income strategy is built to grow, adjust, and protect against rising costs. You don't have to fear the future because you'll be prepared for it. But if you're not sure whether your plan can keep up, or if your income sources are mostly fixed, or if you simply are wondering whether inflation could derail your retirement goals down the road, that's exactly what we help our clients with every day. So if you want help building a tax-efficient, inflation-ready income plan, one that's grounded in numbers and built for your success, book a complimentary call with me using the link in the description. There's no pressure, just a chance to look at the numbers, understand your options, and make a plan that works for real life. Thanks for watching. I'm Mark Wisniewski, and I'll see you in the next video.